This is going to upset some of you. A man's hair tells you where he is in his myth, not in his fashion, in his psychology, whether he shaves it, fades it, or lets it grow wild. Each cut is kind of a confession. If you are a product, you can think of your chosen haircut as a particular subset of marketing or personal branding, whether or not you're conscious of it or not. You and other men typically alter their hair to reflect the season. You can see here on the screens we've got different seasons or chapters or stages in a man's life. If you've watched me for a while, you probably would have seen this materialize in real time, leading to this latest episode, which is I cut all my hair off. But we'll get to that later. Right now, let's discuss the psychology of a man's hair and what it says about you. Let's begin at the initial stage of self-realization for most men, which typically happens between the ages of, I would say, 22 and 25. I think here I was around 23. This is the shaven head look. When I experienced true presence for the first time and the idea of Joseph as a concept, character, or avatar I am inhabiting in this 3D world, naturally, I began to think about how I marketed myself to other people and the broader world. I didn't know who I was or what I wanted to be, so naturally this manifested itself in one of my favorite seasons, the creation or building phase. And what could be more indicative of that season than the shaven head, skinhead kind of look? If you rock a grade 1 buzz, and bonus points if you do it yourself, by the way, that is rawness incarnate, true I don't give a F energy. Practicality does rule in this particular state. Looks are of no importance to you because you have other things that are far more important in your life. You live life very intensely during the season. You do things for the practicality of it above all else. You might have even had thoughts, as I did at 23, when you begin to think even having a hairstyle appears to a certain type of, let's say, vanity as a man. The concept of wasting time going to the barbers and paying money to look pretty, it comes across as partially effeminate in some ways. No different from a woman going to the salon to regularly dye her hair. Ideas of attachment and emotional sensitivity around one's appearance appears weak in your psyche, and there is a quiet sense of kind of pride, like you have a talisman around your neck. I am above such need for validation of my appearance. I'm on an elevated path. I'm building a business. I'm building an empire, cathedral. I'm focused on mastery above the aesthetics. I do love this young, hungry cub chapter. It's very nostalgic and sentimental, but every season comes, goes, maybe even comes full circle. And after years of building, when the fruits of your labor become fat and bountiful, there comes a creeping thought: what is this really all for? Why grind so intensely as a man if you cannot indulge on occasion? And the sweetest fruits of all is as the feminine counterpart. So there becomes a relaxation of your aggressive temperament phasing into adolescence as you realize you have the resources to appeal more to the opposite sex. Although I can't really say in this particular picture I did so. I did have a long-term girlfriend at the time, but that face is especially bloated. Not long after, you're paying £25 every 2 weeks on skin fades and shape-ups. I mean, it's still practical, but the aesthetics are starting to creep in. You're marketing yourself as sexually valuable. You're starting to demonstrate your value with the trappings of success in the form of how you keep your hair. It's a precursor to vanity, though, which we'll speak about in a moment. But I do like this look in a man. It's very balanced, it's classic, it's clean, it's no nonsense, it's professional while also being, attractive. It demonstrates, I suppose you could call this a modern buzz cut with a fade. It demonstrates an interesting psychology as a man because there's two roads you can potentially go down after this. It markets a tenuous balance between this, again, practicality and aesthetics, which has the potential to devolve into vanity if you're unconscious of it. Look, you do vote with your money. I'll focus on this stage for the moment, and we'll get into the other. But what was I saying? You can extend the notion of a man who spends excessive amounts on his appearance as one that is, maybe potentially harboring some feelings of insecurity, which rises kind of in tandem with the monetary value he's willing to part with for sake of appearing as attractive as possible. For example, you can kind of see on it screen, I don't know if any of you watch a lot of football, but this is Michael Richards, one of the pundits on the Champions League. And this guy spends like £400 every month on haircuts, getting a haircut, a shape up, a trim every 4 days. And it often becomes a core conversation in the Champions League punditry, and it just feels to me it's creeping in to be very, very effeminate. Although I do really like Michael Richards. These individuals are so emotionally attached to their hair that they kind of feel shallow in their temperament, no different to a woman who spends, again, all their monetary assets on hair, nails, makeup, cosmetic procedures. I'm sure you see the parallels here. And then this in its aggressive form, this is Neymar here. This is not a good look. This is not a good look. I'll say no more on this. I think the other path you can go down is a season of kind of growth, or a compounding season. If your hair is just your hair is just that, it's growing, it's compounding in length. Long hair, equally masculine, but often sometimes it can be misconstrued as feminine. Especially when I was growing my hair, I remember some comments saying, you're starting to come across as very effeminate, Joseph. But its true nature is very primal, very caveman, very strong, spiritually aligned, natural. Think of Samson. Many of you, maybe some of you don't know the legend of Samson. So this is from the book of Judges. Samson was blessed by God with raw, primal, untapped strength and power. But the condition of his divine strength was dependent on his hair. As long as his locks remained uncut, his power endured. It's about, it's about vitality and virility. It's ancient and rebellious in the modern hair economy of skin fades, or generally, there's this idea that short hair is often seen as the only acceptable hairstyle for men. It's the mark of a man who's reconnected with his instinct, the part of him that existed before society told him, you need to tidy up, fall in line, and stop feeling. This is, again, the last maybe couple days before I had this current haircut that I'm rocking right now. But I do believe, I do adore the psychology behind this look, because it's kind of a wild man and a man who's represented in the fact that he doesn't want to be domesticated. But one of the core reasons, guys, I cut my hair was actually a practical reason. In this kind of climate I'm in, Bangkok, Thailand, its upkeep is ridiculous. So now I've kind of transitioned to, it's funny. I knew I wanted to cut off my hair, so I went, this is my Thai barber, and they are, by the way, some of the most professional, and he took like 2 hours cutting my hair, like massaging me, and pause there, but they take their work very, very seriously. Most of the Thai temperament is kind of like that. But I walked in and he was luckily English speaking, and I just said, look, I need to cut all my hair off. It's a mess. What would you suggest? And he was like, have you ever had a mullet before? And I was like, I have not. He was like, let's do that. And I was like, okay, I trust you. So this is the integration of the wild man. It's not the raw buzz cut club anymore. That was pure instinct. Nor is it the polished fade, which is maybe a social calibrator and a precursor to vanity. But this kind of, I suppose, in between is structured disorder. A man who knows the rules well enough to break them artistically. Psychologically, this might represent a mature masculine energy that is comfortable walking that line between order and chaos. Jung might say, I don't want to speak for Jung, but Jung might say he's made peace with his shadow. But this isn't the final form, by the way. I do believe that there is, I haven't reached this stage yet, but I do believe this kind of classic old money look is full integration. And if these personalities, particularly Sir David Beckham now, we should say, Sir David Beckham, very famous for his different hairstyles over the years, but more recently just rocking this very clean, maybe you could call it a taper, just a very classic, clean, masculine, elegant mature look. And I imagine at some stage, I don't know when, I'll get to this part. But that there is a reversal. There is a reversal here of the balding man variations. Here's my. I know this is sensitive, guys. We're talking about hair, and people are very emotionally attached to hair. And I suppose this is a really important point for me to say that this is just my personal interpretation on my hair over the years, and an insight into what might prove valuable for you guys as well. But here's my kind of take on these. There's two observations I've made here. The first is a man who is clearly balding with these kind of, very deep widow's peaks. And they shout two things. The first is really, I don't care. I really don't care. I'm balding, so what? The grave comes for us all. And I respect these individuals, by the way, who generally, and I need to be careful about how I phrase this, who present a character that is consistent with this season. However, there is another interpretation which, again, it's emotionally charged and sensitive. Maybe a flawed desperation to cling on to youth and immortality. Flawed because, well, youth doesn't last, and immortality is the nature of the soul. It's not the nature of the body. So in many ways, this insecurity, the reason I call it flawed is because it's really baseless. Again, the grave comes for us all. The soul is immortal, but the body is not. So there's really no shame that should be associated with it. Although I do accept that I personally haven't experienced this yet. It might come for me. Maybe that's my karma. I do believe that there is a reconciliation of both psychology, ends of the pole in a balding man, in the form of kind of embracing that bald look. So sometimes I'm sure you guys get this feeling as well, but you see individuals like this and you just like, let it go, man. Just embrace that bald look. And we've got Chris here from First Man, which I really believe is another variation of this fully integrated look, this classic clean masculine look, which reflects a very raw and balanced psychology. There's something, again, this is my opinion here, I'm not sure if you guys have some semblance with this, but there is something intuitively respected in the bald look. It kind of tells the story of a man who's seasoned, who's kind of experienced the vicissitudes of life, the trials, the tribulation, the trauma, and come out the other end kind of refined. And equally, this respect kind of extends as you realize this is more than likely the final form of this individual. Like, they're not going to change their hairstyle after they've really embraced this look, demonstrating that kind of peak maturity and saturation of their confidence in their character, in who they are. In this way, I know it's weird to say, but I've always looked, and why are you looking at bald men, Joseph? When I look at a man who is bald, there's always a quiet feeling of envy I get because of this kind of this confidence, this saturation in their character. Guys, I want to know what you think about this. I want to know what season you are in, and if you think my psychological interpretations of these particular hairstyles have accuracies or maybe completely inaccurate. Are these theories, are these facts? I don't know. You tell me. Speak soon.